Welcome to Apologetics for the Rest of Us podcast with Dr. Ray Ciervo. This podcast seeks to simplify the complex challenges to our faith for the everyday follower of Jesus Christ. You'll discover how to give answers to everyone who asks you about the hope within your heart, as Dr. Ray explains not only what we believe, but why we believe what we do. And now here's your host, Dr. Ray Ciervo.
Hey, this is Ray Ciervo of Notepad Answers, and this is Apologetics for the Rest of Us. Cursed with Common Sense is a great little book to read or to give to someone to read to show them that they can move from skepticism to faith. This is an entertaining book, if I could say that, and I think the author, Nicole Nelson, would agree with that concept of entertaining. It's a fun read, but I'll tell you what, it packs a punch. And it tells us how we need to move from skepticism to faith in Jesus, and that it's not a blind faith, but an informed faith. It's one that you get answers for. So I had the privilege of interviewing Nicole, and this is the result. We have two sessions. This is part one of two parts, where I interview Nicole Nelson about her story on how she moved from skepticism to faith. So here we go.
Okay, so I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota with my parents and a little sister, and we were Lutheran growing up, but I don't think anybody knew why or like what that meant, but
Right.
My parents were Lutheran, so we were Lutheran. And I got baptized as a baby and then confirmed in junior high. And we'd go to Sunday school and all of that. But I don't think we really knew why we were going, but that's just what you do.
Right.
So we would always sit in the back pew because if the Vikings were playing, the Minnesota Vikings football team, then we'd kind of cut out a little early. And so I kind of looked forward to those days, and I just remember just sitting there just like, when is this ever going to end? And if it was communion that day, I knew that was a longer day, and so I'm like, oh, okay, I'm trying to count down how many minutes we have left.
All right.
And I just remember repeating, like the pastor would say something, and then you repeat it.
Right.
And I don't know what we were saying. I knew what we were saying next, but I didn't know why or what it meant or anything.
Right.
So that was my experience, was just kind of thinking, I guess this is what you do. And then once I got confirmed, we kind of stopped going. We'd go on Christmas and we'd sometimes go on Easter, but looking back, I didn't even really know what Easter was. We would just go, and sometimes we'd have a palm branch for some reason and like wave it around. And I knew that was a time probably most people would go to church, but I just didn't even know why.
Right.
I don't even know if I thought to wonder why. It was just what you did. We'd for sure go on Christmas because that's what
Right. You know, they call that CEO, Christmas and Easter only.
Yeah. Maybe like check it off your list. Like, well, we did that.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of my experience growing up. And then, after high school and when I was kind of on my own, I didn't go at all and I didn't even think about it. If I thought about it, here's what I would do. I'd be desperate, so I'd say a prayer.
Right.
And I'd be like, not really sure who I'm praying to or why, or if anybody's there, but like just in case there's somebody there, like, could you maybe help me with this? / if there is a heaven, I don't really want to miss out. So obviously I'm praying could you just remember me? Like I was kind of praying. So
yeah.
Can I just go to heaven then? Probably, because I'm showing, showing some sort of, maybe I believe something.
Right. Okay.
So that was that. And so it wasn't until I had kids of my own that I thought probably the same thing as my parents, oh, I guess this is what you do now. Let's take them to church.
Right.
So we found, we tried a couple churches. They were fine. It was all what I expected. It was boring, but you check it off your list and that's what you do. And then one of my friends invited me to this other church, her church, and she's like, oh, you should check this one out. I think you might like it. And okay, I didn't like where we were going. So I go to this new church. It was for Christmas Eve. My kids were 2 and 1. and he was just trying to get there. And so we sat down and we sat in the back because I didn't like it when people knew that we were new, because then they would talk to us and I didn't want to talk to anybody and I didn't want to introduce myself. I just wanted to hide. So we hid in this back corner going to church, and the pastor, I can't even remember what it was about, but he talked about the Bible let's say he was talking about Paul. I don't know. Paul, and he talked about him like this person.
Right.
A person named Paul. And I was like, I just heard Paul chapter, whatever. I just thought it was some verse. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a person. And then he kind of said it in a story way of who he was and his story of his life. And I was like, oh, these are people. And for some reason, it just stuck with me. And then throughout the week, I was thinking back, on whatever I had learned at church that week. And I was thinking about it like it was useful for me, whatever it was that I had learned. And so I was like, okay, well, let's go back. So then we started to go back, but I didn't want to admit it was for me. So I just kept saying it was for the kids because I felt too prideful to feel like they needed any of this. So, eventually then my walls started breaking down and it was for me. And then I got the case for Christ that we had talked about and found that other people were having questions about historical context. What about dinosaurs? What about, I don't know, history, science.
Yeah.
Started looking into all that stuff. Yeah.
So you came from a background where church was just another part of your social life in a sense. You just went there on Sundays for Christmas or Easter and really hadn't looked at anything concerning the historical part of the Bible, or that wasn't part of your thinking.
I didn't think there were answers to that, so I thought people didn't look into that because they were probably afraid that there wouldn't be answers.
Right.
They just didn't do it, so it made me feel like maybe they were naive or scared to know that this isn't true.
Right. What was your impression of the first Christians that you met? The people who were following the Lord or people who were going to church. What was your first impression?
Yeah, I feel kind of bad saying it now, but I felt like this. In my mind, all of them were women in their mid-50s who were really stressed out about the noodle casserole that they were making for the church potluck.
Yeah.
And they really wanted everyone to know they made their noodle casserole and that they're just is there going to be enough of it? So stressed about who knows what. And then kind of cliquey, where they would use church as an excuse to get together to gossip about other people. But if they were gossiping in the context of why they're sinning, these other people are sinning, then it was okay to gossip because you're talking about God in your gossip.
Okay.
And that was kind of it. And it felt like judging oh, this person had holes in their jeans. Can you believe it? Can you believe they would go to church with holes in their jeans? So it just felt like a cliquey club that I definitely wasn't in and I would never want to be in.
Right. Now,
yeah.
Is that, are you still going to that church or have you changed them?
No, I'm not. And kind of what I realized is maybe there are some people like that, but I think I took every little judgment I had and attached it to every single person who went to church.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's no one person who even has all those qualities, and maybe there's people who have maybe bits of that in them.
Right.
But what I realized was I'm not there to follow other Christians. I should follow Jesus, and Jesus didn't do any of that stuff that I thought was just so annoying.
Yeah. And
so once I realized I'm not there to try to emulate what they're doing.
Right.
Then I kind of, I don't even, it doesn't matter what they're doing to me.
Yeah.
It looks bad and it makes me sad. Other people are probably turned off by this, but for my journey personally, I'm not trying to be like them anyway. So
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that I come up against all the time is that people, you'll ask them, what do you think's wrong with Christianity? And they won't talk about the truth claims that we make about Christianity. They'll say, well, Christians are hypocrites.
Yep.
And, I would say they're worse than hypocrites. Some of them are liars. Yeah, but that doesn't disprove what we believe.
Yep.
Just because they don't live the right way. There's people in every religion that don't live according to what the basic beliefs are.
If you're enjoying Apologetics for the Rest of Us, we invite you to help support us. You can donate by going to www.nopatanswers.com and click on the Support Us button. You can also send a check to RCM P.O. Box 507, Ocean, New Jersey, 07755. We are grateful you are listening to the podcast and pray it helps you strengthen your faith and witness.
So that's our first short break in our interview with Nicole Nelson. She's a delight to talk to, and just love the way she bears her heart and is blatantly honest about her journey. So let's get back into it and listen to Nicole.
Yep.
So you're right. I mean, you saw the right thing.
Well, it's interesting, and now that you've pointed it out, I've never thought of it like this. That was my turnoff from church, but then my questions were like about history and science, so that doesn't even really match. But that was my turnoff, and I think maybe once I kind of got over that, then my questions started of like, is this even true?
Right.
But until I could get over this so-called gossip group that I thought it was, I didn't even realize I had more questions.
Yeah.
But once I got over that hump, then I realized, okay, well now I have actual questions about this.
Yeah. I saw just in your book, I read through it, and I was looking at the quotes, the people that you would start a chapter with, and one of them was Jim Wallace, or J. Warner Wallace.
Yep.
Did you read his Cold Case Christianity, or?
I read parts of it. I actually have it on my Amazon cart right now, and I feel bad that I haven't read it because I know that I take a lot of quotes from it, but I've never read it as a whole. But I follow him on Instagram, and I kind of know his.
Yeah, I don't think he'd mind.
Yeah, I like what he has to say, and he's another one where it feels like, okay, he's smarter than me in this area for sure.
Yeah. And
now he's logically trying to put this together, and here's the conclusion that he came to.
Right.
And I mean, if it's good enough for him in that arena, it should be good enough for me.
Right.
Especially, when you follow enough people that are coming to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I read that, your son had a really serious illness for a while. I don't know how long it lasted, and there were several things that led up to you really making a commitment to faith. So tell me a little bit about that, what God used to get you to that place where you would say, okay, I'm going to surrender, or I'm going to submit to God in this.
Yeah, so that I feel like was my turning point, was my son's illness.
Yeah.
So I felt like leading up to that, I was very interested in the facts of like getting my brain to wrap around all this.
Mm-hmm.
So then I even remember getting to a point where I said to myself, okay, my brain believes, but like, so now what do I do?
Right.
Like, kind of like, how do I make my heart believe, or how do I make my heart believe? Because my brain is satisfied in all this logic. And so I'd go to church and kind of be like, okay, I believe. Now what do you do? Well, so around that time, my son, it was meningitis and encephalitis. So his brain was swollen to the point where he didn't recognize us. And it was just it was the worst thing I'd ever been through.
I could imagine, yeah.
Yeah, so he was 4 years old, and we're in the hospital. He's just laying there, and they're like, you know what? When he wakes up, we don't know what his brain will be like,
Gosh.
So you're like laying there for days just watching your kid, and then he would wake up and he would scream, Mom, 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 help me. And he didn't know I was his mom, and I'd just be like, I'm your mom. I'm your mom. And for your kid not to recognize you, especially in that setting, it was horrible. So I remember laying there one night, and I felt like God was just kind of there. Like, do you trust me? Like, logically checked off your whole list, but like, do you trust me? Here's what you've read about. Here's the time where now it's time to trust. And when I'm reading about it and agreeing with it with my mind, I never had to experience something where it's like, now you do it. Like, are you going to do it?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of when I thought, like, the surrendering thing, like, okay, God, this is in your hands. I can't do anything about this situation. If you have a plan for my life that's going to be having a kid who never knows who I am, then I'm going to have a kid who never knows who I am. If I am supposed to have a kid that all of a sudden can't function in school anymore, I guess there's going to be a reason for that plan for my life. And if he dies, I will know that my plan was that I have this loss in my life, and that for some reason is what my life plan is. And I just, whatever it is, I'm trusting that this is it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like that submitting, that's the only way. There's nothing else I can even think of that. I mean, sadly, that would have happened, that I would have done that.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah. So he did fully recover in almost record time, like half the time they predicted. We did lots of therapies and all this stuff, but now you wouldn't even know that had ever happened. He's just fine. But I never want to let myself forget how desperate I felt then, because then when life gets good again, I get arrogant about, well, it's because I worked really hard or I did this. And I don't ever want to forget how desperate I was, because I think I'm always desperate. Just sometimes it's more obvious than others.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a huge turning point. And then it was like, now my heart's in, now I'm just like crushed in a good way. Like, what do I do? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what were the things that you were reading or searching for that really helped you make up your mind? You know, like you said that your mind believed, but you needed to take that step of faith and really put your life in God's hands. Were there certain things, like you mentioned Josh McDowell's book, More Than a Carpenter, and were there a succession of things, or? It
was kind of like one thing led to another. I feel like, and this still happens to me, as I struggle with something, I need to find a book on it. And now that I kind of have my authors that I know, I'll struggle through it based on this author. So The Case for Christ, The Case for Faith, when I was struggling with what's hell, what's heaven, those kind of things, that The Case for Faith was helpful. More Than a Carpenter, it was like so helpful for me. And then I would go on YouTube and watch debates.
Yeah.
And I would watch, is it Ravi Zacharias? Is that?
Yeah, Ravi, yeah.
I loved watching him, and he's one that can get a little deep for me. So I absorb sometimes a lot, and sometimes stuff goes over my head, but I like listening to him. And that was all for my mind.
Yeah.
And I still think I struggle with finding things more for my heart. I don't know. So one thing lately that I've struggled with was prayer. I was like, well, if there's already a plan for your life, so if you're praying for something, are you like derailing the plan then? Or like, shouldn't you just pray for strength for your plan? I got really confused on what prayer was and what it was meant for. And so C.S. Lewis has a book, I think it's called Prayer. Mm-hmm. And I love C.S. Lewis, even though I don't know if I fully understand all that, but he's like, his quotes are the best.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Tim Keller.
Yeah.
He has a book on prayer. He also had one called The Reason for God, Belief in the Age of Skepticism. And that was helpful for me. Yeah. For my mind back when I was doing that.
Yeah. Well, you've covered some good people there. You've covered the right people.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I mean, Ravi he's the gold standard among apologists. You know, I mean, everybody in seminary who's taking apologetics thinks they're going to be like Ravi when they get done.
Yeah.
Or they hope they're going to be like him. And he's the gold standard, definitely. Frank Turek, I don't know if you've watched Frank, or his ministry is called Cross-Examined.
Okay.
He's very good. He does a lot of stuff with college students.
Okay.
He goes to the college campus. He and J. Warner Wallace work together.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've had both of them. I know Frank from seminary. We went to the same school.
Oh, really?
Seminary. Yeah, he graduated before I did. I actually stayed with he and his wife when I think it was the first or second time I went there for a module, which was a week-long class.
Okay.
But he's also very good. But Tim Keller's book, Reasons for God, that's an excellent book.
Yep.
And C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a must read for every Christian. To me, that's like, you got to read this. You got to see this. And yeah, he's he's not the easiest one to understand. Some of his lectures that he's written down are a little bit, you got to really follow along to understand what he's getting at here.
Yep.
But yeah, you've really looked at the right people. I mean, God's led you to the right people to listen to. Josh McDowell and his son Sean, they've just rewritten, it was a classic for years, still is a classic, but it's called New Evidence That Demands a Verdict.
Okay.
And it's like an answer book.
Okay.
So that one is another one. Like if you have a question about almost about anything in the Bible, they talk about it.
Okay.
So this is the end of part 1 of my interview with Nicole Nelson on her book called Cursed with Common Sense: How I Realized Thinking You're Too Smart for God is Really Dumb. And as I mentioned, it's a great read. You need to go out and purchase a copy and give it to someone you know needs it, or maybe you need it yourself. But part 2 will be coming up in a couple of days, so you can either go to iTunes and look for us there, or also be on YouTube again if you want to watch it. So until the next time, this is Ray Ciervo. I'm signing off right now.
You've been listening to Apologetics for the Rest of Us with Dr. Ray Ciervo. We hope you've enjoyed this episode and subscribe to our podcast. Also, please visit our website at www.nopatanswers.com, where you'll find more information about conferences and seminars. If you have questions for Dr. Ciervo, you can email him at info@nopatanswers.com. Have a great day, and God bless.